Okay, let's dive into this. When we think about the world's absolute most luxurious, complex, and coveted beverages, naturally sweet wines are right up there at the very top of the list. And just to be clear, we're not talking about wines pumped full of artificial syrups or standard table sugar. No way, we're talking about pure liquid gold. And making it? Well, it requires this almost impossible high-wire partnership between a winemaker and the absolute extremes of nature. So welcome to your explainer on the elements of sweet wine, where we're going to explore exactly how winemakers battle blistering sun and freezing cold to literally create magic in a glass. I mean, just look at this pour. You can practically smell it through the screen, right? Pouring a naturally sweet wine is this deeply sensory experience. You've got these intense, vibrant colors, everything from pale, bright greens to deep, rich ambers. And on the nose, they just burst with complex aromas. We're talking tropical fruits, dried figs, delicate spices. But here's the catch. Behind this beautiful glass is a fierce agricultural battle. Because to get this level of natural sweetness, winemakers have to force the grape to dramatically concentrate its own sugars. And they do this by pushing the fruit to absolute extremes before it ever leaves the vine. So here's our flight map for today's explainer. First, we'll uncover the big secret underlying all naturally sweet wines. Then, we're going to travel to some sun-drenched regions to see how prolonged heat transforms the harvest. We'll break down the signature grape varieties that actually make all this possible. After that, we'll dramatically drop the temperature to witness the literal miracle of ice wine. And finally, we'll take a quick tour of the global capitals that have totally mastered this frozen art. Let's get into it. Section 1. The Secret of Sweet Wines. Concentrating nature's sugar. So, whether you're standing in a warm Mediterranean climate or freezing on a northern slope, every single naturally sweet wine starts with the exact same objective, naturally boosting the sugar concentration inside the grape itself. And this isn't some chemistry trick done in the winery. It's done out in the dirt, in the vineyard. Winemakers use a late harvest, which means they deliberately leave the grapes hanging on the vine way past the standard picking season. Then, once these incredibly sugar-packed grapes are pressed and they start fermenting, the winemaker actually steps in and halts the alcoholic fermentation process, often by adding just a touch of alcohol. This is absolutely crucial because it stops the yeast from gobbling up all that wonderful natural sugar. From there, depending on the exact style, the winemaker might undergo a long oxidative aging process to develop those incredible, complex flavors. Section 2. Sun-drenched and late harvested, the heat method. Let's look at our first extreme element, the relentless heat of the sun. All across Europe, winemakers use the late autumn sun to literally dehydrate the grapes right there on the vine, concentrating everything inside. It's kind of like nature's own slow cooker. In Italy, for example, we see the picolet grape. It has this naturally high potential for raisining, which produces wines with these gorgeous, intense floral notes of rose and jasmine. Over in southwestern France, places like Pachering-du-Ville and Jurançon, they actually wait for the grapes to become overripe, or even fall prey to a special fungus called Botrytis cinerea, which sounds gross, I know, but it beautifully concentrates the flavors. Moving down to Spain, the Priorat region creates these fortified sweet ronquios that bring out rich raisin and walnut aromas. And way out in the Canary Islands, the volcanic soils there produce these breathtaking Malvasía wines that are just packed with tropical fruit notes. And this specific example really brilliantly illustrates just how far this heat method can be pushed. Fondialon from Alicante, Spain. Here, they take the Monastrell grape, which, by the way, already has super high natural sugar, and they sun-dry it after the harvest to push that concentration even further. But the real magic, that happens in the barrel. This wine is aged oxidatively in oak for a massive amount of time. We're talking decades or sometimes literally centuries. The result is this deep amber liquid bursting with the aromas of raisins, plums, figs, and toasted nuts. It's history and sunshine captured in a bottle. Section 3. The Signature Sweet Grapes, a Flavor Profile. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that not just any grape can survive being left on the vine for these intense processes. Let's look at the 4 absolute stars of the sweet wine world and their incredibly diverse sensory profiles. Look at Muscat, originating from North Africa, but super famous in Spain. It brings a beautifully soft, juicy palate full of jasmine, lychee, and a hint of clove. Malvasía, originating from the Greek island of Crete, gives us these amazing hits of orange blossom, mango, and nutmeg. Then we have Riesling from Germany's Rhine region offering a crisper profile, green apple, linden blossom, and these really distinct mineral notes that reflect the soil. Finally, Gewürztraminer from France's Alsace region. It's unmistakable with its rich aromas of rose, strawberry, and a surprising little kick of pepper. These 4 varieties are for sure the undisputed champions of the late harvest. So this builds our understanding of 2 very different extremes. Up to now, we've seen the method of warm climates, some drying, over-ripening, and long aging. But now, we're going to pivot to a completely different philosophy: ice wine. Instead of relying on heat to evaporate the water, winemakers rely on freezing temperatures to lock the water inside the berry as solid ice. And as you can imagine, this requires a massive, high-stakes winter harvest in absolutely freezing climates. Section 4, the miracle of ice wine, frozen perfection. I mean, look at this. This is where winemaking becomes a true extreme sport. What you're seeing are healthy, ripe grapes left completely exposed to the elements, just waiting for winter to arrive. Think about the incredible risk the winemaker is taking here. They're leaving their precious, valuable crop out in the open, totally vulnerable to birds, disease, rot, all for the slim chance that the temperature will drop deep enough to freeze the water inside those delicate little berries. It's wild. And when that first hard frost finally hits, the vineyard instantly turns into a ticking clock. The winemakers have to rush out, often in the dead of night or the very early hours of the morning, to conduct a highly selective harvest. But picking them is really only half the battle. The grapes must be immediately transported to the winery and pressed, while the water inside the berry is still completely frozen solid. If the grapes thaw out, the water mixes right back into the juice, and boom, the entire year's gamble is totally lost. No pressure, right? But when pressed successfully, the ice crystals stay behind in the press, and what drips out is this tiny, incredibly precious yield of highly concentrated, sugar-rich must. Now, because of all that sugar, the yeast works very, very slowly during fermentation. This actually results in a wine with surprisingly moderate to low alcohol content, usually just hovering around 7% to 12%. But here is the secret weapon. The freezing process also concentrates the tartaric acid. So you end up with a wine that is incredibly sweet and fruity, yet perfectly balanced by this high electric acidity. It's a flavor profile entirely unique to this frozen, high-stakes process. Section 5. Global Ice Wine Capitals: Germany, Austria, and Canada. While ice wine is made in a few places, there are a couple of countries that are the absolute masters of the craft. In fact, ice wine actually originated in Germany. In regions like the Rheingau and Mosel, the terroir, the environment, plays a massive role. The steep vineyards there are planted on metamorphic rocks like schist and slate. And these slate soils are brilliant. They absorb heat really efficiently during the day and reflect sunlight right up onto the vines to help the grapes ripen early, while also providing excellent drainage. Riesling is the undisputed king here, thriving in these mineral-rich soils to produce ice wine with soaring acidity and complex notes of stone fruit and citrus. Just next door, Austria has built its own stellar reputation, particularly in eastern regions like Burgenland and Nieder-Austria. What really sets Austria apart is its diverse soil composition. You have this fertile loess formed from wind-deposited sand sitting right alongside granite, clay, and gravel. And while Riesling is still heavily utilized, Austrian winemakers also craft ice wine from local stars like Gruner Veltliner, which adds wonderful spicy and citrus notes, or Neuburger, which brings delicate floral and tropical fruit aromas straight to the glass. Finally, we cross the Atlantic over to Canada. Regions like Ontario and British Columbia have something European winemakers totally envy: incredibly reliable freezing winters. This sheer consistency has turned Canada into a global ice wine powerhouse. While they do grow phenomenal Riesling, they also heavily rely on a grape called Vidal Blanc, which is incredibly resistant to the bitter cold and delivers these luscious tropical and peach notes. Fascinatingly, they also successfully use red varieties like Cabernet Franc, creating these striking ice wines packed with red fruit and spice. Really cool stuff. So the crucial point is this: creating a naturally sweet wine is an extraordinary feat of enology. Whether it's the warm, sun-baking vineyards of Spain and Italy or the freezing, perilous slopes of Germany and Canada, these winemakers are quite literally harnessing the extremes of nature. By using resilient, aromatic grape varieties and relying on incredibly late harvests, they're able to concentrate the natural sugars and acids into something truly spectacular. It takes immense patience and honestly immense risk. So, the next time you see a sweet wine on a menu, I want you to remember the sheer battle it took to get it into that class. You're not just tasting a beverage, you're tasting an intense collaboration between human ingenuity and the wildest forces of nature. So whether it's baked by the Mediterranean sun or frozen solid in the dead of winter, which extreme will you taste next? Thanks so much for joining us on this explainer, and we'll see you next time.